prime directive for the Autopilot system is don't crash.
I never seen anything, never, ever seen anything quite like what you've got in the new self-driving thing.
It's hard to change the wheels on the bus when it's going 80 miles an hour down the highway.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Elon Musk was interviewed by Sandy Munro, and I just wanted to cover some key points that came out of that interview. There was some great stuff. But before we start, I want to thank the Vasa Law Firm in Sweden and all my Patreon supporters for helping this channel grow. And remind you to check out the t-shirts. Link in the description below. Elon and Sandy covered a lot of topics, so let's get into it. Are you ready? Let's go!
Friends can ask me, when should they buy a Tesla? I'm like, well, either buy it right at the beginning or when the production reaches steady state. But during that production ramp, it's super hard to be in vertical climb mode and get everything right on the little details. It's just a super difficult thing. If you really want things to be dialed, it's actually the very, very early cars, or once production is leveled off, that's when it's going to be best.
I just thought that was a really refreshing moment where Elon basically admits our cars aren't always that great, and that there's good moments to buy and there's bad moments to buy, and there's a period of time during the production ramp where the quality might be a little bit off. So that's a lesson. I've ordered a Cybertruck. I ordered in the first hour. I think there's a good chance that when Cybertruck comes out, I'll be in that first group where it's really good. But if it takes too long, I might be in the ramp and I might have a problem. So if you're buying a Tesla and you're looking at Cybertruck and you're not in the first group, you might want to hold off and wait. Just a thought.
The seats in your car are phenomenal. These seats, we were sitting in them for hours and hours and hours and hours, and there's no fatigue. They're brilliant, and you make them yourself.
Minimize any peaks and any pressure peaks, so it evens out the pressure. If your butt hurts, it's basically going to be because there's some part of the seat that is producing a pressure peak. And that's going to just cut off your circulation and make your butt hurt.
A lot of the OEMs, they don't want to make seats because they say that's something that should be outsourced. And I believe that anything you touch, anything that you're going to interface with, has to be made in-house, because that's your profound knowledge. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you iterate on it and keep making it better. Let's figure out how do we get a production seat to feel like a bespoke, handmade, hand-tailored seat. Without costing a ton of money. So you just can't, it's very difficult to do that if you're working with a supplier, so.
Well, near impossible, because they got to get it cranked out and moving and quickly. And then what they want to do is they want to take the underpinnings, those weldments or castings, if they haven't gone that far, they want to use those over and over and over again for everybody. And so consequently, everybody may look different on the outside, but inside, probably not so much.
There were two things in that bit that I really liked. The first one is, and you're going to see this again and again in this video, and when you watch Elon enough, you notice this, the depth to which he knows about how the product is made, about how the car is made. Right here, it's the car seat. It's going to be other spots. There's just the level of detail that he's aware of. I can't imagine any other car company CEO, or really CEOs of most any other company out there, that really know their products to that level of detail. So that's really, really amazing. The other detail, this is about Tesla's vertical integration. And this key point that if it's a product that the customer is going to touch, that is a product, a part of the car that the customer is going to interact with, it's really important that you make it rather than having that outsourced. And that's one of Tesla's key advantages that they still have over everyone else, because everyone else outsources a lot of what they do. So when Tesla realized, you know what, these seats aren't quite right, let's work on it, they keep making them better, and they keep making them better, and they keep making them better. And when you have your seats outsourced, it's not something that you're taking care of. They don't put the same level of attention to a product like that, to a part of the product like that, to make sure that it's right. And they don't have the engineering staff, and they don't have the right process in place. And then, as Sandy pointed out, the seat maker, they're making seats for other car makers too. Their incentive is to make the same thing over and over again and make cosmetic changes to it that don't make it better. That really, really stood out. And oh, by the way, Teslas have great seats. You want to get a car, you want to be comfortable at sitting for hours and not getting uncomfortable in the seat, buy a Tesla. Use my referral code. It's in the description below.
We had the beta autopilot system, and we did have problems. But the problems weren't with your system. They were with the roads people are painting, either they don't paint in certain areas, or they paint right in the center. So how are we going to get legislation to make it so that things are consistent between states?
For self-driving, even if the road is painted completely wrong, and a UFO lands in the middle of the road, the car still cannot crash and still needs to do the right thing. What really matters, like the prime directive for the autopilot system, is don't crash. No matter what the lines say or how the road is done, the thing that needs to happen is minimizing the probability of impact while getting you to your destination conveniently and comfortably. The prime directive, absolute priority, is minimize probability of injury to yourself or to anyone on the road, on the pedestrians or anything like that. So it can't be dependent on the road markings being correct or anything like that. It's just got to be, no matter what, it's not going to crash. I mean, it would certainly be helpful to have roads with accurate markings and everything, but like I said, really for self-driving, it's got to be, even if somebody tries to trick the car, they do not succeed in tricking the car.
Right.
Because people will do weird things. So it's got to be maintain safety no matter what, and don't let yourself get tricked.
I never seen anything, never ever seen anything quite like what you've got in the new self-driving thing. This is just absolutely brilliant. This should get into the marketplace as fast as possible. It's accurate. If there's a hole, it'll find that hole. It makes left-hand turns, which I've heard from everybody can't be done. I mean, these are the things that this will save more lives than airbags, seat belts, and anything else that anybody's ever gotten. Because
that's correct. It will. Yeah.
So a couple things there. First of all, Sandy Munro, very, very impressed with FSD beta. Apparently there's a video out there I haven't seen yet where he's just going wild about how amazing it is, all the things that it can do. The other detail I thought was really interesting here was how Sandy Munro was concerned, not that there was something wrong with FSD beta, but that the roads aren't right. And this is something where it's surprising, because if you follow Sandy Munro, you get this sense that he really knows what's going on with Tesla. And at this moment, you get the sense that he really doesn't understand the FSD problem in the way Elon has explained it more than once in the past. That there are always going to be problems on the road that are difficult for humans to deal with even. And the FSD needs the self-driving car needs to be good enough that it can handle anything a human can handle, and ideally do it better than humans do it. So no matter how badly you mess up the road signs, the lines, you drop a UFO out of the sky, the FSD, the self-driving car, has to be able to handle it without crashing and basically do it right. And that's a huge challenge, but it's a software problem, and you can't expect legislatures to fix it. You can't expect governments to do things right. It has to be good enough. It has to be better than human. That's the goal.
How many lines of code is in that thing? A bazillion? A trillion? What?
Well, I don't think lines of code is necessarily a metric of goodness. I like a large number of lines of code to be bad, not good. And in fact, I would generally give like 2 points for deleting a line of code, 1 point for adding a line of code. And then the lines of code thing, when you have neural nets, where you've
right, I got it.
It's not. There's a whole lot of statistics going on, basically a lot of dot products going on.
That's just another moment where Sandy is a hardware guy, and a physical hardware, not a computer hardware guy. He's not a software guy, and it seems like he doesn't really understand what the concept of AI is, what machine learning, neural nets are. It's not about the lines of code. And Elon tried to explain it. I just love this. It's almost like the best code is no code. I'm surprised Elon didn't say that. But that seems like where it's going. Interesting to see that Sandy Munro, as much as he's leaping into the new world, he's still got himself firmly set in the old world, and it's tough for him to grasp this little edge of the detail.
Like, first of all, I think you can generally see the errors, the organizational structure errors, they manifest themselves in the product. Sort of wheelhouse areas of the body. There was a lot of engineering done, and there were a lot of right answers to the wrong question. So somebody would say, like, well, what's the best material to make this little section of the body out of? And what's the right material to make this little section? And engineers would ask, what's the best material for this purpose, best material for that? And they got like 50 different answers. And they were all true individually, but they were not true collectively.
Right.
And when you try to join all these dissimilar dissimilar alloys and You have galvanic corrosion, so you've got to have better sealing, and you've got gaps that you've got to seal, and you now have got to join these things, and some of them don't. Some of them need to be joined with rivets. Some of them need to be joined with spot welds. Some of them need to be joined with resin or resin and spot welds. And it looks, frankly, it looks like a sort of bit of a Frankenstein situation when you look at it all together. If there's like a little error with curing the sealant, or like just somebody who's been working for several hours makes a slight mistake, then now you've got an MBH issue because you've got a little hole and you've got a leak issue, and it's way better to have a single piece casting. And then you don't have any gaps, no sealant. You don't have dissimilar metals, and you can reduce the size of the body shop dramatically.
Right.
So just having the rear body castings for Model Y allowed us to reduce the body shop by 30%.
Yeah.
So there's roughly 1,000 robots on the Model 3 body line, which, by the way, is also not a figure of merit. You want fewer things, not more.
Yeah.
We got rid of 300 robots just with that rear body casting.
Yeah.
And then when we go to the front body casting, we're getting rid of another 300 robots.
Right.
Again, here you can see Elon's attention to the tiniest details. I even took stuff out of that just so it wouldn't run too long. Just a level of detail he's aware of. And then I just love another moment he talks about this. Well, we've got 1,000 robots, and when we did this, we were able to eliminate 300 robots. When we do the front casting, we'll be able to eliminate another 300 robots. It's almost like the best robot is no robot. I just love this, that his goal, reduce the number of parts, reduce the number of the processes, make everything simpler. When you make things simpler, things work better.
I'm very disappointed. I thought I was going to see a single piece casting in a Model 3 as well. I thought you were going to shoot the two and then glue it together, but that's all right.
I mean, at some point we'll
getting over
probably switch to a single piece casting. I think we need to get probably the Texas factory and the Berlin factory going.
Yeah.
And we need a, we do have an issue of it's hard to change the wheels on the bus when it's going 80 miles an hour down the highway.
Yeah.
We just need basically an opportunity to kind of redo the factory without blowing up the cash flow of the company.
Right.
This is something Tesla junkies have talked about a little bit, is going to a single piece casting. Right now, the Model Y, the rear section of the car, is pressed in one or cast in just one piece. Saves a lot of parts, saves a lot of processes, makes things faster. And we're pretty confident that there's going to be a front piece casting, where a lot of the vehicles are soon to be made with front piece casting, and that's going to save another 300 robots, more parts, fewer processes, etc. But it seems like a lot of us feel there's a holy grail, and Sandy feels it too, of a single piece casting, that basically the car's entire structure is cast in one boom. And that just saves a ton of work, and it gets it done right, and it makes the vehicle better and all these great things. But as Elon had said, we've been making them a certain way, and in order to get there, we would basically have to stop everything we're doing and cut off the revenue of the company, and then the company would die because we're not making enough cars. Because we're not making cars, and we're going to blow up the company. But what I love here is he's pretty much telling us when it's going to happen. We've got to get the Berlin factory done. We've got to get the Austin factory done. And then we got to do the factory differently. And we know what's coming is the 2023 Compact. That they've got a new vehicle coming down the road. They hinted at it, with a tarp over it or whatever, a cover over it at Battery Day. There is a future car coming, and it's going to be special. It's going to be different. It's going to be better. That's going to be the single piece casting. That's going to make it easier to manufacture. It's going to make it easier to manufacture at high speed, higher volume. They'll be able to get a lot more of them. It's going to cost less to make them, and it's going to be better. So that's what's coming in the future. And this is another thing I keep hearing. You keep hearing people saying the competition is coming, blah, blah, blah. Oh, the other companies are doing this. No one is doing anything like this. No other car company is coming anywhere close to even a single piece casting for the rear or a structural pack. All the things that Tesla is doing, they are so far ahead, and they are moving faster. If the competition is coming, it's coming for internal combustion engines. It's not coming for Tesla because they're not even close. They're not even in the same playing field. That's how far. This is one of the things where you have a CEO like this who runs the company, who gets it, who gets that manufacturing is huge, tremendously important, and they've got to get the lead, they've got to build a lead, they've got to get better and better and better. And the other companies aren't doing that. They don't see it, they don't get it, they don't have. It's just too much bureaucracy, too many problems. They can't get there. Tesla's so far ahead.
But are you going to have 3 castings then, or just 2?
Well, effectively, there'll be a rear casting, a front casting, and then the center will be a structural pack.
Yeah.
We're going to transfer shear through the cans of the cells, and just do shear transfer, which gives you a super stiff, great moment of inertia. And so getting dual use of the cells, and so the cells become structure. And that's like what the point I was trying to make at the battery dray presentation. But I think a lot of people didn't quite understand why that's such an important thing. The cells today in every car are carried like a sack of potatoes. Exactly. They actually have negative structural value, because not only they need to be, not only they don't serve to aid in the structure of the car, and they have to be isolated from the rest, from the rest of the car. So it's isolated from vibration and shock loads and that kind of thing. So then you've got to put mass into isolating the cells, because otherwise they'll bang against the side of the battery casing, and that's not good.
Yeah.
But by essentially bonding the cells in there, and where the bonding foam serves as both an adhesive and a fire retardant, basically you get 2 birds with 1 stone.
This is Elon Musk explaining how important structural battery pack is. And there's 2 key advantages. Number 1, when you don't have structural battery pack and you have the batteries in the car, they're added weight. And you have to put things in the car to keep them in place so they don't bounce around, and that adds even more weight. If you take the batteries and you make it a structural pack, you've saved weight twice. You've saved the weight of the batteries because now they are the structure, and you don't have to put the stuff in to keep them in place. And the other benefit is it makes the vehicle very rigid. It gives you desirable characteristics for the car that makes the car feel better, perform better, etc. You mentioned moment of inertia. He's going to talk about that again in a minute.
Well, let's show you. This is what happens if you've got just a little floppy sheet, or you just have like a limited number of stringers for shear transfer. You can see it's quite bendy. But as soon as you have a whole bunch of cans or honeycomb or anything like that, and you bond an upper lower phase sheet, it gets crazy stiff. Like you can't bend, like you can just put them together and like one thing's floppy and the other thing's stiff as hell. And that's really what you want. And then this will also give like the torsional rigidity will be much better. And so if you're trying to improve like the ride and feel of the car, you say what's the frequency of this car? Is it like a sort of real bendy spring, or is it like tight? And that feeling of like, is this car tight? Really, if people don't understand, why does this car feel better than the other car? It's like, well, because you've got your natural frequency is high, and you've got good torsional rigidity. And then another factor is like, what is your polar moment of inertia? So like basically, to what degree is like the mass grouped towards the center as opposed to spread out towards the outside? And like you can see this like with like an ice skater, where if the ice skater holds arms out, you rotate slowly, brings arms in, rotate fast. Right. That's what's meant by polar moment of inertia.
Exactly.
So it's like, can you rotate this car fast? You can if you bring the mass to the center.
So to some extent, that's tough for non-engineers like me to understand, but basically the car's better if it's got more stiffness. And the car, I believe the moment of inertia, it allows the car to turn better. It gives you better handling if the mass of the car is more towards the center of the car. And they talked about that at Battery Day, that it also, Drew Baglino said, by bringing it in, it makes it safer from a crash because it's more towards the center of the car. So there's just so many benefits from this structural battery pack that are going to play out. And I really believe when Model Y comes out in Berlin in the 3rd quarter of 2021, it's going to blow everyone away. It's going to be so much better than anyone realizes. Like the Model Y is already the best car in the world. And the Model Y in Berlin is going to be that much better. It's going to weigh less. It's going to handle better. So much benefit. This is going to blow everyone away.
A tiny fraction of a millimeter accurate, and it's a low-cost toy. Right. Buy $20 for a Lego set. So like, if Lego can be that precise, then so can a car.
If you had the stiffness of the castings down below, and you take a carbon fiber basically structure and put it over the top, absolutely every door is always going to be perfect. You won't have to have fixtures. You won't have to have anything. It just goes boom, done.
There are some other issues with carbon fiber, which is that carbon fiber with resin has a coefficient of thermal expansion which is basically 0. And if you have parts that are, say, aluminum or steel, aluminum's got quite a high CTE. Stainless has, it's like about halfway. If you have like a hot versus a cold environment, like you can't have your doors jam.
Yeah,
so
correct.
Having matching CTE is pretty important for things like a door frame. So that's if we're using, say, steel, we probably need to stay with a steel door, because otherwise we're going to get like CTE issues.
Yeah.
That's another striking example of the depth of knowledge that Elon Musk has, getting into the materials properties and the thermal expansion. Well, if you use this metal with this other metal, or use this metal with carbon fiber, then the doors are going to stick or the doors won't open. And that, again, what other CEO has that level of knowledge? It's really amazing.
Some of the challenges with doing like a large aluminum casting there is you don't want to have a heat treat or quench step afterwards. The heat treating and any kind of like air or certainly water quench, it's going to cause the thing's going to potato chip on you. It's going to basically warp.
Yeah.
So we had to develop a custom alloy to make sure we could get good material properties, but not require any step after the casting that could distort the shape. That was actually, that's a very important thing. Yeah, material science is, I think, one of the most useful classes you can take in engineering, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that those kinds of things are the things that maybe the bigger OEMs should be thinking about. I think bringing stuff back in, especially now, I mean, I don't need the size of an engine plant and a transmission plant when I got a little dinky electric motor and basically a 2-speed gearbox or 1-speed gearbox.
Yeah,
I mean, that's going to be a big difference. I don't know what they're going to do with all that stuff, and I really don't know how they're going to start implementing this.
A really important detail there that relates to the entire car industry and maybe other industries as well, that Tesla does things like material science in-house, and the major car companies, the old car companies, outsourced all that, and they don't really do that kind of work anymore. And Sandy has this really interesting point that if they want to compete with Tesla, if they want to enter this new industrial age, they're going to have to bring things in-house. And he's saying they have all this space because they have big factories. They're not going to be able to use all of them. But at the same time, I think he's implying that the bureaucracy of these car companies won't allow them, the bureaucracy, the politics, all the stakeholders probably will not allow them to make the changes they need to make. And I think they were being a little subtle about it, but they may not get there.
After I gave a speech and said, this was a couple of years ago now, and I said that the crossover point for electric over ICE is 2030. And basically that was because of tearing apart your car, the Model 3.
You mean a majority of your car? When you say crossover point, how are you finding that?
50% of the vehicles are going to be sold are going to be, or more than 50% are going to be pure EV, or they're going to be hybrid. And I believe
hybrid, like, no, for sure. I think it probably 10 years, it's probably majority EV.
Yeah, I truly believe that. But when I brought it out, analysts were saying, maybe somewhere around 2045 there'll be about 15% EVs and whatnot.
Sure.
And now we're looking at California with 8% right now and going higher.
Sure.
And then you've got Europe saying, forget it, you can't drive here if you've got a nice vehicle, on and on and on.
I really enjoyed that back and forth between Sandy and Elon about when the crossover point is, when more than half of vehicles produced will be EVs. And I think Elon's sandbagging when he says 10 years. I think it's going to be before 10 years. And Sandy is sort of maybe underestimating it by including hybrids. I think hybrids are going to be dead soon. What was really striking was the response Sandy got from the analysts that, well, maybe by 2045, 15% of the vehicle market will be EVs. And that was only 2 years ago. How far in the sand do these guys have their heads stuck that they can't see what's happening? It's really, really stunning that they don't see it. That the car, this is why the car industry is in trouble. The old car industry is in trouble because they literally cannot see how radical this change is. If they are starting to see it, it's already too late, and they just aren't willing or able to make the changes they need to make to get out of the death spiral that they are heading into.
Wiring was...
We have a lot to improve on the wiring front. I think there's a lot more that can be done to improve wiring.
Yeah, well, right now...
Also, like 12 volts. I mean, what are we still doing with 12 volts?
42 is where everybody should be, but...
I think 48.
Or 48.
Yeah.
And I think,
with the new SX, we're finally transitioning to a lithium-ion 12 volt.
oh, good.
Yes,
That's an excellent idea. Smaller box.
It's got way more capacity, and the calendar and cycle life match that of the main pack.
Oh, cool.
So we should have done it before now, but it's great that we're doing it now. The 12 volts is like very much a vestigial voltage, and it's like absurdly low. I mean, even like basically powered Ethernet is like around 50 volts.
Yeah.
And so you can have like powered Ethernet. Nobody's like sweating it that like this is powered Ethernet, this like phone here. Nobody's worried about like powered Ethernet at like whatever 48, 50 volts. That's really what the car's low voltage system should be at. You want to put power and data over the same wires.
That's right.
And have it be high speed, like higher speed than CAN bus.
Right.
And so you can like basically dump data on the bus instead of having all these point-to-point wires.
So that's another detail that I think we can see in vehicles coming up, that future Tesla vehicles will use a 12-volt lithium-ion battery instead of the old 12-volt lead-acid battery. This has been a frequent complaint I've seen about Tesla vehicles. It's a problem with any vehicle. I have this problem with our cars, that the 12-volt battery dies and you're sort of stuck. And it doesn't make sense for a Tesla, which has a battery pack that lasts 1,000,000 miles and is easily recharged, that the lead-acid battery dies. And people were pushing Elon, hey, put a lithium-ion battery in there. And there are organizational reasons and inertia, whatever, that made it difficult to do that. But they finally did that with S and X, which means probably in the newer vehicles, they'll have the 12-volt battery will now be lithium-ion, and you won't have to replace the battery. So maybe in the Berlin Model Y and the Texas Model Y, they'll go that way. Maybe they'll be able to shift Fremont Model Y and Model 3, and the future Model 3s will go that way. And also the wiring, going from 12-volt wiring to 48-volt wiring. That's a pretty interesting detail. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me, but that's because I don't know what I'm talking about. Apparently, there's a significant weight saving because you can use thinner wires. And then if you can run data over the same wires, then you can save more weight by not using an extra set of wires. So that's very likely coming soon. I don't know, again, if that's going to be in Berlin Model Y and Texas Model Y, if they're going to roll that out to other vehicles. The biggest thing I think we can look forward to is the 2023 Compact. A lot of these things that we're talking about, these innovations that they're making progress towards, are going to be in the 2023 Tesla Compact. It's going to have a single piece casting. It's going to have a structural battery pack. It's going to have 4680 cells. I think iron phosphate cells, but we'll see. It's going to have lighter weight wiring, and it's going to have the lithium-ion battery in place of the old lead-acid battery for the 12-volt. All of these things coming together are going to make the cars that much better. So the 2023 Compact, first of all, I think the Berlin Model Y is going to knock everyone's socks off, and the Texas Model Y will be the same. But the 2023 Compact is going to be one more step in this revolution towards much more advanced cars that are cheaper, more efficient, safer, perform better, feel better, all these other things. It's all coming together in the Berlin Model Y and then the Tesla Compact in 2023. The other detail about that that's really important is that the other car companies are already so far behind where Tesla is now, and they're not really even making much progress in innovating towards where Tesla is. While Tesla is implementing even more radical innovations, going faster and faster, getting to that vehicle that is going to be so much less to produce, so much more efficient, all these gains. And the other car companies, they have prototypes that may at some point achieve less than what Tesla is achieving already. It's not only that Tesla's in the lead, it's that the lead is growing. This is mind-blowing how big this is, and it all comes down to organizational structure, vertical integration, the culture of innovation, and having a leader at the top who is driving that and driving that and driving that.
At Munro, if you want to get your master's, I'll pay for it. If you want to take a course in mechanics or something, I'll pay for it. Even if you want to take a wood carving thing, I'll pay for it, but I will not pay for an MBA. I won't do it ever, never. So you made a comment, and I started tap dancing.
Yeah, I think just generally the path to leadership should not be through, basically MBA business school situation. It's like it should be kind of work your way up, do useful things, and there's a bit too much of somebody goes to a high-profile MBA school and then kind of parachutes in as the leader, but they don't actually know how things work. They could be good at, say, PowerPoint presentations or something like that, and they can present well, but they don't actually know how things work. Kind of like just not aware of what's really needed for, to make great products. I mean, I don't want to trash MBAs too much here, and I actually do have a dual undergrad, Wharton undergrad, and physics. But I think it's just a little bit too much. Like people look at MBA school as like I want to parachute into being the boss instead of earning it, and I don't think that's good.
Pretty interesting to see Elon and Sandy trashing MBAs. Now, the truth is that there are different people who get MBAs. And if you just came out of college and had a job for a couple of years and went and got an MBA and you don't really know anything yet, then maybe that MBA isn't that valuable. Just to be clear, full disclosure, I was a PhD student at Stanford Business School. I graded MBA papers. I helped professors prepare for their MBA classes. I'm familiar with the materials. It's not useless, but it's particularly useful in the hands of people who have actually done something before they went to an MBA program. And that's probably why Zach Kirkhorn, the CFO of Tesla, is so good, as he worked at Tesla before he went to get his MBA. So it's not, if you have done engineering work, if you have worked with products, if you've gotten in the trenches and then you get an MBA, the lessons from the MBA program can be really helpful. If you don't know how to make a product and you don't know how the business works and you just sort of drop in like they're saying, then yeah, that's a problem. Don't just get an MBA without knowing how to do stuff first. Learn something useful before you do that. Same thing with law school, really. I'm a lawyer. Same thing with law school. Do something useful first.
I've really been a fan of short sellers. I don't know whether you have a comment on that.
There's very few areas in life where you can sell things that you don't own. Short selling really where you can sell shares that you don't own. When I said it was vestigial, I mean it came from an era when stocks were traded by people traveling on horseback to exchange stock certificates. And in order to have the transaction speed not take weeks, somebody would say, well, the stock certificate is coming on that horse. I don't have the stock certificate right now, but I promise you that I'm getting the stock certificate, and the rider's going to be here. I'm in New York. The rider's going to be here from Chicago in 3 days, and then I'll be able to give you the stock certificate. Yeah. That's where this whole silly thing arose. Yeah. The way short selling is used today is it's kind of like it's frankly used against the public. So most people aren't aware that short selling even exists. And then the ones that are, very few of them know actually how to use it. It's basically like 0.01% of stockholders know how to use short positions to get ahead. It's like, I think, effectively a tax on the public.
I think it's immoral myself. I just don't think it's right at all.
And I mean, the intensity of the attack was crazy. And I was like, man, this it would like cause you to lose faith in humanity, the degree to which this went on. Like, we don't have shorting in like private companies. The vast majority of companies, over 90%, are private, and you cannot short them. And yet somehow we get private companies get things done. There's a perniciously false effective markets argument made for shorting, but it is vice disguised as virtue.
I thought that was a nice little discussion about short selling. There is what's known as not an effective markets, but an efficient markets argument that there's some value in short selling. I think Elon is probably correct that formal short selling really does not contribute much to efficient markets. And, buying puts, which is effectively buying the right to sell a stock, probably accomplishes most of the same things without creating the pernicious problems that short selling itself creates with people selling shares they don't own.
The most exciting thing that's happened to me in a long time was driving that the self-driving I'm telling you, it's just
sure.
It blows your mind. Are you gonna let anybody else have that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we were going to roll out the full self-driving to the whole fleet and make it available to the whole fleet. We're just being very careful about the testing. I think there's actually sort of a dangerous middle ground that we have to be careful of, where the system is good like 99.9% of the time, and then that could lead people to be complacent, and then but then that one time where it's got issues that we don't want people to basically, it can be so good that you get comfortable, but not necessarily good enough to handle all of the corner cases. So we want to just make sure that in that transition to full self-driving, it's really, we're taking as much care as possible.
Yeah.
I think actually that's one of the things we're going to program into the car, that if you fall asleep in the car, it'll just take you home.
Yeah.
Like, it's most likely that's where you want to go.
Yes. And that's a great idea. Yeah.
And then we're even going to have it like, so if it detects that you're having issues, it'll take you to the hospital. Like if you say, like, just like,
having a heart attack or something like that.
It'll just take you straight to the emergency room.
Well, number one, it's great to see that Sandy's excited about what he experienced. And number two, I love that moment when Elon explains the problem of when it gets so good that you trust it before you should. That it's good 99.9% of the time, but there's that 0.1% of the time where you really need to be paying attention. Can they set it up so that before it gets to safer than human, or much safer than human, that you're still paying attention and you don't trust it and become complacent, is the word he used. So that's one of the challenges that we're facing, that he's facing, Tesla's facing, and we are facing as we move forward into full self-driving becoming a reality. And yes, it is going to spread. It's about 1,000 people in the beta now, and they are planning on expanding it, but they want to be careful to make sure they do it right and choose the right people who are going to pay attention until it's ready to really be released to the whole general public. I thought it was a great conversation. It was fun to watch. One of the better interviews of Elon, because Sandy Munro comes from a better background to ask the questions that other people don't know how to ask. If you like this video, please check out my other videos. Support this channel on Patreon. Patreon supporters really make a difference. Buy the t-shirts. The t-shirts are at elonbits.com, and they're also below the video in the description and below that. And thank you so much for watching.